Commander Sarah Chun had seen many impossible things during her 15 years exploring the galaxy, but nothing quite like this. She stood in the gleaming throne room of the Zephyrian Empire, her worn human uniform a stark contrast to the crystalline walls that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. The Empress Valiana towered before her, her four arms folded in a gesture that could mean anything from curiosity to contempt. The diplomatic mission had been routine until this moment. Earth's United Colonial Command had sent Sarah to negotiate mining rights for rare minerals needed for humanity's expanding fleet. The Zephyrians controlled 17 star systems rich in quantum-grade crystals, and they had been surprisingly receptive to human proposals. Too receptive, Sarah now realized. "You claim this is your first visit to our empire," Empress Valiana said, her melodic voice carrying an undertone Sarah couldn't quite identify. The translator implant behind Sarah's ear struggled with the complex harmonics of the Zephyrian language, but the meaning was clear enough. "That's correct, Your Imperial Majesty. Humanity has had no previous contact with your people." Sarah kept her voice steady, though something about the Empress's manner set off alarm bells in her mind. The ruler's 6 eyes, arranged in 2 rows across her elongated skull, seemed to be studying Sarah with an intensity that went beyond diplomatic interest. Valiana's guards shifted subtly, their bioluminescent markings flickering in patterns Sarah had learned indicated heightened alertness. Each guard stood nearly 8 feet tall, their insectoid features hidden behind ceremonial masks that resembled stylized suns. Their energy weapons remained holstered, but Sarah could feel the tension in the room like a physical presence. "Perhaps you are mistaken," the Empress said, reaching into the folds of her elaborate robe. "Or perhaps your people keep secrets from their representatives." What she withdrew made Sarah's breath catch in her throat. It was a simple piece of paper, the kind human children use for drawing. The edges were slightly torn, and crayon marks covered the surface in bright, innocent colors. At the center of the drawing was an unmistakable figure, a human being rendered in the way only a child could manage, with stick-thin limbs and a disproportionately large head topped with brown scribbles for hair. "My daughter Zyra made this drawing 3 cycles ago," Valiana continued, her voice growing softer but somehow more menacing. "She has never left the capital city, never seen any species other than our own. The artists in my court confirmed that no such being appears in any of our historical records or cultural archives." Sarah stared at the drawing, her mind racing. The figure was clearly human, but more than that, it was clearly female. The child had even attempted to draw what looked like a uniform, complete with insignia that bore a startling resemblance to the United Colonial Command's rank structure. "Your Majesty, I don't understand. How would your daughter know to draw?" "That is precisely what I intend to discover," the Empress interrupted, her 6 eyes never leaving Sarah's face. "My daughter is gifted with the sight, Commander Chun. She sees things that others cannot, knows things that have not yet come to pass. But she has never been wrong about what she sees." The sight. Sarah had heard whispers of such abilities among various alien species, but the scientific community remained divided on whether they represented genuine precognition or simply highly developed intuition. If the child really did possess some form of prophetic ability, then her drawing raised questions that made Sarah's diplomatic mission seem trivial by comparison. "May I speak with your daughter?" Sarah asked carefully. "Perhaps there's been some misunderstanding." Valiana's expression shifted, and, for a moment, Sarah glimpsed something almost vulnerable in the alien ruler's features. "That would be unwise. Zyra has been having nightmares since she made this drawing. Dreams of fire falling from the stars, of great ships locked in battle, of worlds burning." The Empress paused, studying the drawing in her hands. "In these dreams, your people play a central role." The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. If the child's visions were accurate, they suggested that humanity and the Zephyrian Empire were destined for conflict. But why? Both species had shown every sign of being able to coexist peacefully. The preliminary negotiations had gone smoothly, with both sides expressing genuine interest in mutually beneficial trade agreements. Your Majesty, humanity has no hostile intentions toward your people, Sarah said. We came here seeking partnership, not conquest. I believe you speak truthfully about your own intentions, Valiana replied. But you may not speak for all of your kind. My intelligence networks have been monitoring human expansion for some time. Your species has a remarkable talent for conflict. Sarah couldn't deny that. Humanity's history was written in blood, and even their expansion into space had been marked by territorial disputes and minor wars between various colonial factions. But they had also shown an increasing capacity for cooperation, especially when faced with external threats. We've learned from our mistakes, Sarah said. The Colonial Charter specifically prohibits aggressive expansion into systems already claimed by intelligent species. Charters can be rewritten, the Empress observed. Governments can change. What happens to your peaceful intentions when your people discover the true extent of our strategic resources? It was a fair question. The mineral wealth of the Zephyrian systems was vast beyond anything humanity had previously encountered. The quantum crystals alone could revolutionize human technology, providing power sources that would make faster-than-light travel accessible to civilian populations. Such discoveries had a way of changing priorities. Show me the other drawings, Sarah said suddenly. Valiana's eyes widened slightly. Other drawings? A child with prophetic abilities doesn't make just one drawing about something this significant. If your daughter has been having nightmares about war between our peoples, she's probably drawn more pictures. I need to see them. For a long moment, the throne room was silent except for the soft harmonic humming that seemed to emerge from the crystalline walls themselves. The Empress studied Sarah with an intensity that made her skin crawl, as if those 6 alien eyes could see directly into her thoughts. You are perceptive, Commander. Yes, there are others. Valiana gestured to one of her guards, who approached and handed her a leather portfolio. Zyra has been quite prolific in her artistic endeavors since her visions began. The Empress opened a portfolio and began laying drawings on a small table beside her throne. Sarah stepped closer, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. The childish artwork depicted scenes of space battles, explosions, and what looked like evacuation ships fleeing burning planets. In several of the drawings, human figures could be clearly identified fighting alongside what Sarah assumed were Zephyrian warriors. Wait, Sarah said, pointing to one particular drawing. This one shows humans and Zephyrians fighting together, not against each other. Indeed, that detail has puzzled me as well. Valiana's tone suggested she found this possibility even more disturbing than the prospect of war. My daughter's visions suggest that while our peoples may indeed come into conflict, we may also find ourselves as unlikely allies. Sarah studied the drawings more carefully, noting details she had missed on first glance. Many of the space battles seemed to involve ships of an unfamiliar design, sleek, organic-looking vessels that didn't match the aesthetic of either human or Zephyrian technology. In one drawing, what looked like a massive creature with tentacles was attacking a space station, while human and Zephyrian ships worked together to defend it. These other ships, Sarah said, do you recognize them? No, they appear in approximately half of Zyra's drawings, always as aggressors. My xenobiologists have been unable to identify them from our databases. The Empress collected the drawings and returned them to the portfolio. Commander Chun, I will be direct with you. These visions suggest that our two species will face a common enemy, one that neither of us could defeat alone. The weight of that statement settled over Sarah like a heavy blanket. If the child's visions were accurate, humanity's first contact with a major alien empire had just become infinitely more complicated. Instead of simple trade negotiations, she was now dealing with the possibility of prophetic warnings about an unknown threat. What do you propose we do with this information? Sarah asked. I propose that you remain here as my guest while we attempt to learn more about what my daughter has seen. I have already sent word to my most trusted advisors and our greatest scholars of the site. If these visions represent a genuine glimpse of future events, then both our peoples need to be prepared for what is coming. Sarah considered her options. Her ship was docked at the orbital station above the Zephyrian capital, with a skeleton crew of 3 officers who were probably wondering why the negotiations were taking so long. She could insist on returning to Earth immediately to report these developments to Colonial Command, but that would mean leaving behind the only source of information about this potential threat. On the other hand, staying meant putting herself entirely at the mercy of an alien ruler who might be using elaborate deceptions to manipulate humanity into some unknown agenda. The drawings could be fabrications, the child's visions, nothing more than coach performances designed to create exactly this sense of urgency and dependence. But as Sarah looked at the simple crayon drawing of a human figure that had started this entire conversation, she found herself believing that the Empress was telling the truth. There is something about the innocent, unpolished nature of the child's artwork that spoke to its authenticity. No adult forger, no matter how skilled, could have captured that particular combination of childish enthusiasm and unconscious accuracy. I'll need to contact my ship and inform them of the situation, Sarah said finally. And I want to examine these drawings more thoroughly, with your permission. Of course, you will be provided with comfortable quarters and full access to our historical archives and scientific databases. I have also arranged for you to meet with our leading experts on prophetic abilities. The Empress paused, her expression growing somber. But, Commander, there is one condition to your remaining here. Sarah tensed, which is, you must promise me that if these visions prove to be accurate, you will do everything in your power to ensure that your people are prepared for what is coming. The survival of both our civilizations may depend on it. Looking into those 6 alien eyes, Sarah saw something she had not expected to find in the ruler of a vast interstellar empire: fear. Whatever the child had seen in her visions, it had shaken even the powerful Empress Valiana to her core. I give you my word, Sarah said. As the guards escorted her from the throne room, Sarah caught a glimpse of movement in one of the high balconies overlooking the chamber. A small figure stood there, watching her with large, curious eyes that seemed far too old for such a young face. The child raised one small hand in what might have been a greeting or a warning, then disappeared into the shadows. Sarah had the distinct feeling that her real education about the Zephyrian Empire was only just beginning. The guest quarters assigned to Sarah were more luxurious than anything she had experienced during her years of deep space exploration. The walls were made of the same crystalline material as the throne room, but here they had been tuned to emit a soft, warm light that seemed to respond to her presence. When she approached a wall, it would brighten slightly, and when she moved away, it would dim to a comfortable background glow. Dr. Keth Moravin arrived at her quarters within an hour of her arrival, introduced by a guard as the Empire's leading expert on prophetic phenomena. The Zephyrian scholar was elderly even by the standards of her long-lived species, her carapace showing the silver markings that indicated advanced age and wisdom among her people. Commander Chun, Dr. Moravin said, settling her considerable bulk into a chair that had been specially designed for Zephyrian physiology, I understand you wish to learn about the site and its manifestations in young Princess Zyra. Sarah sat across from her, the portfolio of drawings spread on the table between them. I need to understand how reliable these visions are. My people will want to know whether we're dealing with genuine prophecy or with something else entirely. Dr. Moravin's mandibles clicked in what Sarah had learned was equivalent to a thoughtful pause. The sight is not common among our people, occurring in perhaps 1 in every 10,000 births. But when it does manifest, it follows certain predictable patterns. She reached into her own satchel and withdrew a thick volume bound in what looked like scales. I have studied prophetic phenomena for over 300 of your years, Commander. I can tell you with certainty that Princess Zyra possesses the strongest manifestation of the site that has been recorded in our history. What makes you so certain? The clarity and specificity of her visions, for one thing. Most individuals with the site experience vague impressions, symbolic representations that require extensive interpretation. Zyra's visions are remarkably literal and detailed. Dr. Moravin opened her book and withdrew several pages covered in complex diagrams. But, more importantly, we have been able to verify the accuracy of her past predictions. Sarah leaned forward. What kind of predictions? 3 cycles ago, before she had even learned to speak properly, Zyra drew a picture of our moon, Theres, splitting in half. Our astronomers dismissed it as childish imagination until seismic sensors detected instabilities in the moon's core. They managed to establish mining platforms to harvest valuable materials before the moon broke apart exactly as Zyra had predicted, down to the specific pattern of the fractures. The implications of that statement made Sarah's pulse quicken. If the child could predict astronomical events with such precision, then her drawings about humanity and the coming conflict carried significantly more weight. 2 cycles later, Dr. Moravin continued. She drew pictures of our trade negotiations with the Korthak Collective, including specific details of the treaty that wouldn't be finalized for another 6 months. She even drew the ceremonial gifts that would be exchanged, items that the Korthak had not yet decided to offer. Sarah picked up one of the drawings showing human and Zephyrian ships in battle formation. These images of conflict, do they show specific events or general possibilities? That is the crucial question, is it not? Dr. Moravin's 6 eyes fixed on Sarah with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. The site does not typically show inevitable futures, but rather what we call confluence points, moments when the actions of individuals can determine which of several possible futures becomes reality. So the war between our peoples isn't inevitable. Perhaps not, but the threat that would drive our species together certainly appears to be. Dr. Moravin pointed to one of the drawings showing the strange, organic ships. These vessels appear in every vision Zyra has had over the past month. Their arrival seems to be a fixed point, unchangeable regardless of what happens between humans and Zephyrians. Sarah studied the drawing more carefully. The alien ships were unlike anything in her experience. They seemed to be grown rather than built, with flowing lines that suggested biological origin. Weapon systems appeared to be integrated into the hull structure itself, and what might have been engines looked more like organ systems than technological components. Have your xenobiologists been able to determine anything about these ships' design? Sarah asked. Very little. The closest analogs in our databases are certain deep space organisms that exist in the void between galaxies. But those creatures are purely biological and show no signs of intelligence or technology. Dr. Moravin paused, her mandibles clicking rapidly. There is one troubling detail that our analysis has revealed. The energy signatures that Zyra draws around these ships match theoretical calculations for weapons systems far beyond anything either of our civilizations possesses. A soft chime indicated someone was requesting entry to Sarah's quarters. She opened the door to find a young Zephyrian page carrying an ornate message cylinder. From Her Imperial Majesty, the page said in carefully pronounced human standard. She requests your presence in the strategic planning chamber at your earliest convenience. Sarah looked at Dr. Moravin, who was already gathering her materials. It seems our theoretical discussion is about to become very practical, the scholar observed. The strategic planning chamber was located deep within the Imperial Palace, its walls lined with tactical displays showing real-time information about Zephyrian military assets throughout their 17 systems. Empress Veliana stood at the center of the room, surrounded by what were obviously her top military advisors. The tension in the room was palpable. Commander Chun, the Empress said as Sarah entered, I'm afraid our situation has become more urgent. We have just received a deep space sensor report that I believe you need to see. One of the military advisors activated a holographic display showing a 3-dimensional star chart. Red indicators marked the positions of what appear to be massive objects moving through space at the very edge of sensor range, still months away from Zephyrian space, but following a trajectory that would bring them directly to the heart of the Empire. These contacts appeared on our long-range sensors 6 hours ago, the Empress continued. The objects are too distant for detailed scans, but their size and energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine as she studied the display. The movement patterns of the unknown contacts showed a level of coordination that suggested intelligence, and their size indicators suggested vessels larger than anything humanity or the Zephyrians had ever constructed. How many contacts are we talking about? Sarah asked. Initial counts suggest at least 50 major vessels, with numerous smaller contacts that may be escort ships or fighters, one of the military advisors responded. Their approach vector suggests they have detailed knowledge of our star system configurations and defensive positions, as if they had been studying us for some time, the Empress added grimly. Sarah thought about the timeline Dr. Morvan had described. Princess Zyra had been having visions about these unknown aggressors for several months, which meant they had been planning their approach long before humanity had ever made contact with the Zephyrian Empire. Whatever these beings were, their interest in this region of space predated the human-Zephyrian encounter. Your Majesty, I need to contact my ship immediately and send word to Earth, Sarah said. If these ships are as dangerous as your daughter's visions suggest, humanity needs to know what's coming. Already arranged. Your communications officer is standing by in our main communications center. But, Commander, there is something else you need to know. The Empress gestured to another tactical display, this one showing the approaches to human-controlled space. Our long-range sensors indicate that similar contacts have appeared on vectors that would take them directly to your colonial systems. The full scope of the threat was beginning to become clear. This wasn't just an attack on the Zephyrian Empire. It was a coordinated assault on multiple species simultaneously. The unknown aggressors had apparently been observing and planning strikes against every major civilization in this region of the galaxy. They're hitting everyone at once, Sarah realized, preventing any of us from coming to each other's aid. That appears to be the strategy, yes. Which brings us to the proposal I wish to make. Empress Valiana stepped closer to Sarah, her expression serious. Our two species have barely begun to know each other, but circumstances are forcing us to make decisions that would normally take years of careful diplomacy. Sarah had a feeling she knew what was coming, and the magnitude of it made her head spin. I am prepared to offer humanity a full military alliance, the Empress continued. Joint command structure, shared intelligence, coordinated defense strategies. Our combined fleets will be stronger than either of us could manage alone. It was exactly what Princess Zyra's drawings had suggested. Humans and Zephyrians fighting side by side against a common enemy. But Sarah was just a diplomatic liaison with no authority to negotiate military alliances, especially not ones that would fundamentally alter humanity's position in the galaxy. Your Majesty, I don't have the authority to agree to such an arrangement. That decision would have to be made by the Colonial Command Council, and they would want extensive consultations with the civilian government. How long would such consultations take? Sarah did the math in her head, factoring in communication delays and the typical pace of governmental decision-making. At minimum, several weeks. More likely 2 or 3 months. According to our projections, the unknown fleet will reach our outer defensive perimeter in 47 days. The room fell silent as the implications of that timeline sank in. There would be no time for extended negotiations, no opportunity for the careful diplomatic process that such a momentous decision normally required. If humanity and the Zephyrian Empire were going to work together against this threat, they would have to trust each other based on very limited acquaintance and the visions of a child. There may be a way to expedite the process, Sarah said slowly. The Colonial Charter includes provisions for emergency alliances in the face of existential threats. If I can present compelling evidence that such a threat exists, the Council can approve a temporary military alliance with a simple majority vote. What kind of evidence would be compelling enough? Sarah looked around the room at the assembled Zephyrian leadership, realizing that she was about to make a decision that could affect the future of both species. I need to speak directly with Princess Zyra. if her visions are as detailed as Dr. Moravin suggests, she may have seen specific details about these invaders that could help us prepare for what's coming. The Empress exchanged glances with her advisors, and Sarah could see the reluctance in her expression. My daughter is very young, Commander. The visions disturb her greatly, and we have been trying to shield her from their worst effects. I understand, but she may be the key to saving both our civilizations. If there are details in her visions that could help us identify weaknesses in the enemy fleet or predict their specific tactics, that information could make the difference between victory and defeat. After a long pause, Empress Valiana nodded slowly. Very well, but the interview will be conducted under carefully controlled conditions, with our best psychologists present to ensure my daughter's well-being. As the meeting broke up and the various officials dispersed to begin their urgent preparations, Sarah found herself standing alone with the tactical display still showing the approaching unknown fleet. The red indicators seemed to pulse with malevolent purpose, markers of a threat that could reshape the entire galactic political landscape. She thought about the simple crayon drawing that had started all of this, a child's innocent artwork that had revealed the approaching storm. Tomorrow, she would meet the young princess whose visions might hold the key to survival for two entire civilizations. The weight of that responsibility was almost crushing, but Sarah had spent her career preparing for moments when individual actions could have vast consequences. As she made her way back to her quarters to prepare her report for Colonial Command, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing at one of history's great turning points. The decisions made in the next few days would determine whether humanity's expansion into the galaxy would continue, or whether this unknown enemy would end both human and Zephyrian civilization before they had a chance to truly know each other. The child's drawings suggested that cooperation was possible, but Sarah knew that possibility and reality were often separated by the choices individuals made under impossible circumstances. Tomorrow, she would learn whether Princess Zyra's visions offered hope, or merely a glimpse of civilizations united only in their final defeat. Princess Zyra was nothing like what Sarah had expected. The young Zephyrian sat cross-legged on an elaborate cushion in the center of what appeared to be a playroom, her small hands moving constantly over sheets of paper as she drew with the focused intensity that only children could manage. She was perhaps 5 years old by human standards, though Sarah knew that Zephyrian aging followed different patterns than human development. What struck Sarah most was the princess's eyes. Like all Zephyrians, Zyra had 6 eyes arranged in 2 rows, but hers seemed to hold a depth of knowledge that was unsettling in someone so young. When she looked up from her drawing to study Sarah, it felt as though the child was seeing far more than just the human woman standing before her. She knows you, Dr. Moravin said softly from her position beside the door. I can see it in her posture. She has been expecting this meeting. Empress Valiana knelt beside her daughter, speaking to her in the flowing harmonics of the Zephyrian language. Sarah's translator implant caught fragments, words about the sky friend and star dreams and the warning time. The child listened solemnly, then nodded and set down her crayons. Princess Zyra has agreed to share her visions with you, the Empress translated, but she says she can only show you what she has seen, not explain what it means. She is still learning to understand the gift that has been given to her. Sarah approached slowly, settling onto a cushion across from the princess. The child's most recent drawing lay between them, and Sarah could see that it depicted what looked like a space battle, with human and Zephyrian ships fighting against the strange organic vessels that had appeared in all of her visions. Hello, Princess, Sarah said gently. I am Sada. I come from a place very far away, where there are people like me. Zyra tilted her head, studying Sarah with those disconcerting eyes. When she spoke, her voice was high and clear, and the translator rendered her words in careful, formal language. I have seen you before, Sky Friend Sarah, in the dreams that come when I sleep, and sometimes when I am awake. You are important to the time that is coming. Can you tell me about these dreams? The princess reached for a new sheet of paper, and began sketching rapidly with a blue crayon. As she drew, she spoke in a matter-of-fact tone that made her words even more chilling. The hungry ships come from the dark between stars. They have been traveling for longer than my grandmother's grandmother has been alive. They eat planets the way I eat sweet fruit. The drawing that emerged under her small hands showed a planetary surface with what appeared to be massive structures extending down from orbit like roots or tentacles. As she added more details, Sarah realized she was looking at some kind of resource extraction system on a scale that defied imagination. They don't want to conquer, Sarah said, understanding beginning to dawn. They want to consume. Yes, Zyra said, switching to a red crayon to add ominous details to her drawing. They find worlds with life, and they take everything. The metals, the water, the living things. When they're finished, nothing remains but empty rock. Dr. Moravin moved closer to examine the drawing, her mandibles clicking in distress. Princess, have you seen what happens to the people on these worlds? Zyra's drawing hand paused, and for a moment she looked like the frightened child she truly was. Some are taken to work in the hungry ships. Others are processed to feed the ship creatures. The lucky ones die quickly when the taking begins. The clinical way she described such horrors sent chills down Sarah's spine. This wasn't conquest in any traditional sense. It was industrial-scale predation by a species that viewed other intelligent beings as nothing more than resources to be harvested. How many of these hungry ships are there? Sarah asked. Zyra reached for a black crayon and began drawing dark shapes scattered across the paper like stars in the void. More than the grains of sand on the ceremonial beach. They spread across the galaxy like a great swarm, moving from star to star, taking everything, leaving nothing. The implications were staggering. Sarah was looking at evidence of a galactic scale threat that made every previous crisis in human history seem trivial by comparison. If the princess's visions were accurate, they were facing an enemy that had been systematically harvesting civilizations for centuries or millennia. Princess, Sarah said carefully, in your dreams, do you see humans and Zephyrians fighting together against these hungry ships? Zyra nodded enthusiastically, reaching for a green crayon to begin a new section of her drawing. Yes, the shipbuilders and the crystal singers work together to fight the hungry ones. But she paused, her expression growing troubled. Sarah waited, sensing that the child was struggling with something particularly difficult to convey. But first, there's a time of not trusting, Zyra continued. Some of the shipbuilders think the crystal singers are lying. Some of the crystal singers think the shipbuilders want to steal our worlds. People who should be friends fight each other while the hungry ships come closer. Sarah felt a sinking sensation in her stomach. The princess was describing exactly the kind of mutual suspicion and political maneuvering that could prevent the alliance between humanity and the Zephyrian Empire from forming in time to matter. Even with the evidence of the approaching threat, there would be those on both sides who would see cooperation as weakness or opportunity for betrayal. Do you see how the not trusting ends? Sarah asked. Zyra's drawing hand moved more quickly now, adding details that showed space battles and planetary evacuations. When hungry ships attack the crystal world where the young crystal singers learn to shape sound, the shipbuilders come to help even though no agreement has been made. After that, the not trusting stops. Sarah realized the child was describing a specific battle, probably one of the first encounters with the invading fleet. If her visions were accurate, humanity would prove its commitment to the Alliance by defending Zephyrian civilians even before formal agreements were in place. Can you show me more about how the fighting happens? Sarah asked. For the next hour, Princess Zyra drew picture after picture, each one revealing new details about the coming conflict. The hungry ships, which Sarah was starting to think of as the Devourers, appear to use biological weapon systems that could adapt to enemy tactics in real time. Their ships were indeed grown rather than built, and they seemed to be controlled by a collective intelligence that shared information instantaneously across vast distances. But the princess's drawings also revealed weaknesses. The Devourer's ships, for all their adaptability, seemed to have trouble with coordinated attacks that came from multiple vectors simultaneously. Their biomechanical systems required specific environmental conditions to function optimally, and they appeared vulnerable to certain types of energy weapons when struck in particular locations. Most importantly, Zyra's visions suggested that the Devourers were not invincible. In several drawings, she showed their ships being destroyed or driven off by combined human-Zephyrian fleets. The key seemed to be the integration of human tactical flexibility with Zephyrian technological capabilities. "Princess," Sarah said as the session began to wind down, "do you see how this war ends?" Zyra set down her crayons and looked directly at Sarah with those impossibly wise eyes. "I see many endings, Skyfriend Sarah. In some, the hungry ships take everything and the galaxy becomes empty. In others, the shipbuilders and crystal singers become strong together and drive the hungry ones away. In the best ending, they learn to help other star people fight the hungry ships too, and the taking time ends for everyone." "What determines which ending becomes real?" "Choices," Zyra said simply. "The choices you make, and the choices my mother makes, and the choices of people I have never seen in places I have never been. Every choice changes the path to the ending." Dr. Moravin stepped forward. "Princess, you must be tired. Perhaps we should—" "No," Zyra interrupted, reaching for her crayons again. "There is one more thing Skyfriend Sarah needs to see. The most important thing." The drawing she created next was different from all the others. Instead of space battles or planetary scenes, she drew what looked like a meeting between representatives of multiple species. Humans and Zephyrians were clearly depicted, but there were other figures as well, beings Sarah didn't recognize, representing civilizations that humanity had not yet encountered. "This is the after-time," Zyra explained. "When the hungry ships are defeated, the star people who fought together become the help-together people. They share knowledge and protect each other from new hungry ship times." Sarah stared at the drawing, realizing she was looking at a vision of a galactic alliance that could emerge from the coming crisis. The war against the Devourers wasn't just about survival. It was about the birth of a new kind of civilization, one based on cooperation between species rather than competition for resources. "Princess," Sarah said, "do you see me in this after-time?" Zyra smiled, the first truly childlike expression Sarah had seen from her. "You are there, but you're not the same. You become a bridge builder, helping star people learn to trust each other. You teach them the hard lessons that the hungry ship time brings." As the meeting concluded and Sarah was escorted back to her quarters, her mind buzzed with the implications of what she had learned. The princess's visions painted a picture of a crisis that was both more terrible and more hopeful than she had imagined. The Devourers represented a threat that could end civilization as they knew it, but the response to that threat could create something unprecedented in galactic history. Back in her quarters, Sarah found an urgent message waiting from her communications officer aboard her ship. Colonial Command had received her preliminary report and was requesting immediate clarification on several points. The political machinery of humanity was beginning to turn, but Sarah knew it would move too slowly unless she could provide the kind of evidence that would galvanize immediate action. She began composing her detailed report, including everything she had learned from Princess Zyra's visions. As she wrote, Sarah realized she was essentially asking her species to commit to an alliance based on the prophetic drawings of an alien child. Under normal circumstances, such a proposal would be dismissed as fantasy. But these weren't normal circumstances. The sensor readings confirming the approach of unknown fleets provided independent verification of the threat. The princess's previous accurate predictions established her credibility. And, most importantly, the scope of the crisis demanded responses that went far beyond normal diplomatic procedures. As Sarah transmitted her report through the Zephyrian communications array, she knew she was setting events in motion that could not be undone. Within days, both humanity and the Zephyrian Empire would be mobilizing for a war that would determine the future of their civilizations. The child's drawings suggested that victory was possible, but only if both species could overcome their natural suspicions and learn to fight as one. Looking at the tactical displays showing the approaching Devourer fleets, Sarah prayed that they would have enough time to learn those hard lessons before the hungry ships arrived to begin their harvest. The response from Colonial Command came faster than Sarah had expected. Within 18 hours of her transmission, a priority message arrived ordering her to maintain her position and continue negotiations with the Zephyrians while an emergency fleet was assembled and dispatched to her location. Admiral Rebecca Torres, one of humanity's most respected military leaders, would arrive within 10 days to assess the situation firsthand. Sarah shared this news with Empress Valiana during their morning briefing, watching as the alien ruler's 6 eyes processed the information with obvious relief. Your people move quickly when they perceive a genuine threat, the Empress observed. I confess I was concerned that human bureaucracy would prove too slow to respond effectively. Admiral Torres has authority to negotiate military alliances without consulting Earth, Sarah explained. If she's convinced that the threat is real, she can commit our forces to joint operations immediately. They were interrupted by the arrival of General Keth Sardion, the Empire's supreme military commander. The massive Zephyrian's bioluminescent markings were flickering in patterns that Sarah had learned indicated extreme agitation. Your Majesty, he said without preamble, our deep space monitors have detected significant changes in the approaching fleet's formation. They have accelerated their approach and altered course toward the Kepler system. Sarah felt her blood run cold. Kepler was one of humanity's most important colonial systems, home to over 200 million civilians and some of the most advanced shipyards in human space. It was also significantly closer than the Zephyrian capital systems. How much time does that give us? The Empress asked. Assuming they maintain current speed, the first wave will reach Kepler's outer defensive perimeter in 26 days. Full fleet arrival approximately 4 days later. The timeline had just been cut almost in half. Sarah's mind raced through the implications. Admiral Torres's fleet wouldn't arrive for 10 more days, leaving only 16 days to organize and deploy a defensive force capable of stopping an enemy fleet of unknown capabilities. We need to warn them, Sarah said, and we need to send what forces we can to assist in the defense. Agreed, Empress Valiana said. General Sardion, what ships can we commit to the Kepler defense? The 3rd and 7th battle groups are currently deployed near our border with human space. Approximately 60 ships, including 4 dreadnoughts and full support elements. They could reach Kepler in 18 days if they depart immediately. Sarah stared at the alien military commander, hardly believing what she was hearing. The Zephyrian Empire was offering to commit a significant portion of its fleet to defend human civilians, based entirely on the visions of a child and sensor readings of unknown contacts. It was an act of faith that went far beyond normal diplomatic relations. General, the Empress continued, you will place those battle groups under joint command with human forces. Commander Chun will serve as liaison to ensure coordination. Your Majesty, Sarah protested, I'm not qualified to coordinate fleet operations. I'm a diplomatic officer, not a military strategist. Perhaps not, the Empress replied, but you're the only human currently present who understands both the threat we face and the capabilities our forces can bring to bear. My daughter's visions show you playing a crucial role in the early battles. I intend to ensure those visions have the best possible chance of proving accurate. Over the next 48 hours, Sarah found herself thrust into a role she had never imagined. She worked with Zephyrian tactical specialists to understand their fleet capabilities and weapons systems, while simultaneously coordinating with human commanders to develop integrated battle plans. The challenges were enormous. The two species used completely different tactical doctrines, communication protocols, and command structures. The breakthrough came when Princess Zyra requested a private meeting with Sarah. The young Zephyrian had been drawing constantly since their last conversation, producing dozens of new pictures that showed increasingly detailed tactical scenarios. Sky friend Sarah, the princess, said as they sat together in her playroom, "I have been seeing the first battle more clearly. There are things you need to know." The drawings she showed Sarah were remarkably specific. They depicted the Kepler system's defensive formations, the approach vectors of the Devourer fleet, and what appear to be tactical recommendations for countering the enemy's initial assault. "The hungry ships will come in 3 waves, Zyra explained, pointing to sequential drawings. First, the Scout Devourers to test the defenses. Then, the Warrior Devourers to fight the Guardian ships. Finally, the Harvest Devourers to begin the taking." Sarah studied the tactical implications. If the princess was correct, the defenders would face a carefully orchestrated assault designed to overwhelm their forces through successive waves of specialized ship types. "How do we stop them?" Sarah asked. "The Crystal Singers and shipbuilders must not fight the same way," Cyrus said, switching to a fresh piece of paper. "Crystal Singer ships are strong together, but move slow. Shipbuilder ships are fast alone, but fragile separate. If they fight like one people instead of 2 peoples, the hungry ships cannot adapt fast enough." The child began drawing what looked like a complex battle formation, with Zephyrian dreadnoughts providing heavy fire support, while human cruisers and destroyers conducted rapid hit-and-run attacks. The key seemed to be using the strengths of each fleet to cover the weaknesses of the other. "There's something else," Zyra said, her expression becoming troubled. "In the first battle, many Guardian ships are lost. Many Star People die. But this must happen for the after-battles to be won. The hungry ships must think they are winning, so they do not call for more swarms." Sarah felt a chill as she realized the child was describing a strategic sacrifice. The first battle at Kepler would have to appear to be a partial victory for the Devourers in order to prevent them from calling for reinforcements before the Alliance could be fully mobilized. "Princess, how many ships do we lose?" "In the best seeing, the Crystal Singers lose 12 Guardian ships, and the shipbuilders lose 31. But this teaches both peoples how to fight together, and the hungry ships think the galaxy people are weak." The numbers were staggering. The human portion of the loss projection represented nearly a quarter of the colonial fleet's active ships. But Sarah was beginning to understand the strategic logic. If the first battle could be managed carefully, it would serve multiple purposes, blooding the Alliance forces in actual combat, providing crucial intelligence about Devourer capabilities, and convincing the enemy that they faced only token resistance. When Admiral Torres arrived 3 days later, Sarah was waiting with a complete tactical analysis based on Princess Zyra's visions and her own collaboration with Zephyrian military planners. The Admiral was a stern woman in her 60s, with gray hair and the kind of bearing that suggested she had seen more than her share of impossible situations. "Commander Chun," Admiral Torres said as she reviewed Sarah's reports, "you're asking me to commit the fleet to a battle plan based on the drawings of an alien child. You understand how that sounds?" "Yes, ma'am. But the tactical projections are solid, even without the prophetic element. The Zephyrian fleet has capabilities that complement our own perfectly, and their intelligence about the enemy ships provides significant advantages." "And you believe this child can actually see the future?" Sarah considered her answer carefully. "I believe she can see possible futures, Admiral. Whether this particular future comes to pass depends on the decisions we make. But her track record for accuracy is remarkable, and we don't have the luxury of extensive verification." Admiral Torres studied the tactical displays showing the projected battle formations. "The coordination requirements alone make this incredibly risky. Our crews have never worked with alien forces before. Communication delays, different tactical doctrines, unfamiliar weapons systems. It's a recipe for disaster." "Or for something unprecedented," Sarah countered. "Admiral, if we can make this work, we're not just defending Kepler. We're proving that human and Zephyrian forces can fight as one. That capability will be essential for the larger war we're facing." The next week was a whirlwind of preparation. Human and Zephyrian ships converged on predetermined coordinates, where crews began the complex process of establishing joint communication protocols and practicing coordinated maneuvers. The language barriers alone proved nearly insurmountable until Zephyrian technicians developed real-time translation systems that could handle rapid tactical communications. Sarah found herself shuttling between ships, serving as interpreter not just for language, but for the fundamentally different ways the two species approach warfare. Humans emphasized individual initiative and rapid adaptation to changing conditions. Zephyrians preferred detailed coordination and overwhelming application of force at carefully selected points. The solution came from studying Princess Zyra's drawings more carefully. The child had depicted human ships operating in small, independent squadrons that could respond quickly to tactical opportunities, while Zephyrian battle groups provided stable fire bases and coordination nodes. Instead of trying to make both species fight the same way, the alliance would leverage their differences to create a more flexible and resilient force structure. When the Devourer fleet finally appeared at the edge of the Kepler system, Sarah was aboard Admiral Torres's flagship, monitoring communications between human and Zephyrian forces. The initial sensor readings confirmed Princess Zyra's predictions with unsettling accuracy. 3 distinct formation types were approaching: light scout vessels, heavy combat units, and massive ships that could only be the specialized harvest platforms. All units, this is Admiral Torres, the human commander, broadcasted on the Joint Tactical Frequency. Execute Formation Delta 7. Human squadrons maintain flexibility protocols. Zephyrian battle groups establish fire coordination per joint planning. Remember, we are one fleet with one mission. The battle that followed was unlike anything in either species' military history. Human destroyers darted between the larger capital ships like wolves around bears, striking at enemy formations and withdrawing before the Devourers could respond effectively. Meanwhile, Zephyrian dreadnoughts poured concentrated fire into enemy formations, their crystal-enhanced weapon systems proving remarkably effective against the biomechanical targets. The Devourers adapted quickly, but not quickly enough. Their collective intelligence was optimized for facing single-species opponents with predictable tactical doctrines. The chaotic mix of human improvisation and Zephyrian precision created situations their biological computers couldn't process effectively. But Princess Zyra's predictions about casualties proved accurate as well. The Devourer harvest ships deployed weapons that could literally consume enemy vessels, breaking them down into component materials that were absorbed into the enemy fleet. Sarah watched in horror as ships containing thousands of crew members simply dissolved under the alien assault. When the battle ended after 6 hours of desperate fighting, the strategic situation was exactly as the child's visions had predicted. The Devourers had achieved a tactical victory, forcing the Alliance fleet to withdraw while suffering relatively light losses themselves. But they had also revealed their capabilities and tactics, providing crucial intelligence for future engagements. More importantly, human and Zephyrian forces had proven they could fight together effectively. The initial coordination problems had been overcome through necessity and shared purpose. Veterans of both species now understood how to work with their alien allies, creating the foundation for the larger alliance that would be needed to defeat the Devourer swarms. As the surviving ships regrouped and began planning for the next phase of the war, Sarah stood on the bridge of Admiral Torres's flagship, looking at the latest message from Princess Zyra. The child had sent a new drawing showing ships from dozens of different species converging on a massive battle formation. At the center of the formation were human and Zephyrian vessels, no longer distinguishable as separate fleets, but truly integrated into a single force. The after-battle time begins now, the message read. The bridge builders must help the Star People learn to trust fight together. The hungry ship time can end, but only if all peoples become help-together people. Sarah looked around the bridge, where human and Zephyrian officers now worked side by side as shared tactical stations. The trust that had been built through shared sacrifice was already beginning to transform both species' understanding of what was possible. The war against the Devourers would continue for months or years to come. But the foundation for victory, and for the Galactic Alliance that would emerge from that victory, had been laid in the desperate hours of the Battle of Kepler, guided by the visions of a child who could see futures that adults could barely imagine. As Sarah began composing her report on the battle's lessons, she realized she was no longer just a diplomatic liaison. She had become what Princess Zyra had foreseen, a bridge builder, helping different species learn to trust each other enough to fight as one. The child drawings had shown her the path forward, but it would be up to all of them to walk it together.